Isn't it nice to know why we sing things the way we do? But one thing Scott forgot to tell you. There's a test next week. So hopefully you were taking notes. Now back to our scripture. Bombings in Paris and Brussels. Terrorist attack in San Bernardino. Terrorists being arrested. Email and Benghazi scandals. Promises to make America great again, and free college education for everyone, and gay rights and abortion rights. I don't know about you folks, but I'm sick and tired of listening to the news. I'm going to ask you, because some of you may not be old enough to remember, but many of you are. Remember how you felt when you heard the news of the 12 students killed at Columbine High School. I wonder how it makes a school teacher feel when you hear things like that. Remember how you felt when you heard the news of the killing of 5 young girls and the wounding of 5 others at an Amish school in Pennsylvania. Or the slaying of 32 students at Virginia Tech. Or the murder of 13 soldiers at Fort Hood, Texas. Or the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Or the murder of Christian and ethnic minorities every day in the Middle East. If you're like most people, you've experienced shock and dismay on hearing the news of these first events. But unless you're personally connected to a victim, it's likely that each subsequent tragedy has less emotional impact on you. In fact, with the reporting of the latest tragedy, your reaction may have been a little more than a sad shake of the head and a weary, oh no, not again. And your attention probably shifted away from the news much more quickly than it did after Columbine. I remember I was glued to the TV every chance I had an opportunity. I couldn't believe something that horrible would happen in a country like this. But it isn't surprising. After all, we've lived through 9/11. And our shock threshold, folks, has been raised. Now when we hear of a senseless slaughter, our reaction is more controlled. As individuals and a nation, we've become numb to bad news. And this isn't a criticism. Don't take it as that. It's not intended as any type of criticism. You know, when tragedies become commonplace, it isn't humanly possible for us who are at a distance to experience the same level of distress as those who are close at hand to a tragedy. And our lessened reaction to these tragic events has nothing to do with not caring. It has nothing to do with a lack of empathy. It's that we have a survival function that causes us to become protective of our emotional energy. You know, we can't continue to dump it out day after day on extreme events and have anything left for daily living. And so a kind of numbness creeps in. And to some degree, it needs to. You know, it's a defense mechanism, folks, that keeps us from going over the edge. Now that said, such numbness can also give us a jaded view of life. A pervasive pessimism that whispers to us that the cards are really stacked against us. And the forces of chaos and destruction will ultimately prevail. Folks, that's fatalism. And that's something that we don't want to surrender to, is fatalism. But even when we don't want to submit to it, it nibbles at the edges of our minds. When we contemplate awful things, it nibbles there. And fully developed, fatalism can cause us to doubt God's existence, or at least God's goodness. I remember a country song from back in the 80s, and now I know I'm speaking past some of you, but it was a song that was sung by Anne Murray, and its title was A Little Good News, and it made the top of the country charts when it came out. And the lyrics of this old country song was not that old. Told of the standard bad news of the day that made up the TV news and newspaper reports. Now, if you remember back then, the only TV news you got was the 6 o'clock or the 6:30 or 7 o'clock national news on TV. I can remember my mom and dad, and this was before the 80s, they were glued to the TV every evening to watch Huntley Brinkley, you know, in the national news. But the news of that day, back then, was, as it is today, fighting in the Middle East, the bad economy, a robbery, a plane hijacking. Remember those which used to happen on a regular basis? Damage to the environment and so on. But then the song says this: just once I'd like to see the headline say, not much to print today. Can't find nothing bad to say. Because nobody robbed the liquor store on the lower part of town. Nobody OD'd. Nobody burned a single building down. Nobody fired a shot in anger. Nobody had to die in vain. We sure could use a little good news today. And it goes on, how I want to hear the anchor man talk about a county fair. And how we cleaned up the air. How everybody learned to care. Nobody was assassinated in the whole third world today. And in the streets of Ireland, all the children had to do was play. And everybody loves everybody in the good old USA. We sure could use a little good news today. And what made the song so popular when it came out was that it voiced a sentiment that a lot of people held. That the proliferation of bad news weighs us down and we need some relief. And even though this song is dated, it's timely because it recognizes the underlying pessimism about this life of ours. Against all that, there's the vision of John of Patmos had of an eternal age to come. Where a multitude of people, it says, so great it can't be numbered, it can't be counted, with representatives from every nation, tribe, and language group, stand worshiping before the throne of the Lamb of God. And they cry out good news. Salvation belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb. And when John seeks to know who these people of this multitude are, he's told, these are they who have come out of the great ordeal. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Now, in the context of John's time, the great ordeal likely referred to the bitter experiences, the bad news that befell the followers of Jesus at the onset of the Jerusalem War in 66 AD. But we can read in our own context and apply it to the bad news ordeals of our time as well. In contrast to the pessimism that the first century ordeal might have engendered. And there were folks dying for the faith. In spite of that pessimism, however, this Revelation passage sees the brightness, the good news beyond it, beyond that ordeal. These people who have come through that great ordeal faithfully will hunger and thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd, and he will guide them to springs of the water of life. These are the ones who were numbed by the battering of bad news in their day. But in the realm to come, they are, I know it's not a word, but I know what a way to express it, unnumbed. You know, they were numbed by that battering news in their day. But in the realm to come, they are unnumbed. In fact, they have no need for defensive numbing, because God will wipe every tear from their eye. So what about us? If this passage is to fit our existence somewhere, it has to be read as belonging to some future that we cannot see and can only, like John, envision. And when we can only hold that vision with the most slender of threads, those of promise and hope, and perhaps even with, there's a better day coming. Now, I know some folks who aren't of faith, and even maybe some folks of faith will tell you that's a cop-out. That's not a cop-out. There's hope and promise, and there's a better day coming. I want you to note, however, that a multitude in Revelation sees this brightness because they are gathered around the throne of God in worship together. They're gathered together around the throne of God. Perhaps in that time to come, just perhaps, that throne is the place where they get their questions answered about life. But what John's vision shows us is that in that place of worship, they jointly perceive what they need to know. That the Lamb is their shepherd. As you and I, gathered here, live on this side of eternity, what we need to know is that God is still here in this life, that He hasn't left us, that He is our shepherd, that God is still our shepherd too. And corporate worship can bring us the assurance that that's true. It can give us a glimpse of the divine perspective when we gather together like this on Sunday mornings. You know, it's significant, folks, that we don't go to church for private devotions. Do your private devotions at the house. You don't go to church for private devotions. We go there as a part of a congregation. And we get some of the uplift we need from fellow worshipers. And one thing that helps us maintain hope when that soul-numbing bad news is all around us, when I say I don't even want to turn the TV on or the radio and listen to the news any longer, what helps us maintain hope with that soul-numbing bad news when it's all around us is that We're coming before God in company with others who share the hope that there's a better day coming. So, folks, it's no wonder in the eternal age to come, those gathered around God's throne aren't described one by one as an uncountable multitude. Well, there's Linda, and there's Trudy, and there's Shay. They aren't described like that. They're described as an uncountable multitude, not as individuals. They grew to be so many because they were already following Jesus in company with each other when they were on this side of eternity. You know, there have been enough awful tragedies caused by somebody with a grudge, or a paranoia, or evil in their heart, or a desire to get even, or whatever, that we assume similar things will continue to happen from time to time in some place in our society, don't we? We just believe they're going to continue to pop up periodically. Folks, evil is real. Sin rages in people's hearts. Madness descends. Despair begets chaos. But standing here among the people of God, in this place of worship, you and I can sense the truth that good is stronger than evil. That there is something that cannot be taken from us because God has given it to us. And furthermore, we know that nothing, absolutely nothing, can separate us from the love of God. Folks, there is a better day coming. There truly is. That's my hope. And I pray that it's your hope as well. Would you pray with me? Oh God, this world at times is full of madness. And we come sometimes, God, to the edge of despair. And yet, God, we're drawn back when we have the opportunity to gather together in worship of you and the Lamb. And so, God, we go forth from this place and into this week, knowing that evil is real, despair nips at our heels, but praying, God, that you will strengthen us by the power of your Spirit, so that we might realize that there's more than what we see with our eyes, hear with our ears. That there's another world out there. Another world, God. And that there's a better day coming for each of us. In Jesus' name.